Welcome to the Music Fundamentals Lecture, Rhythm 2, Compound Meter. I'm Dr. Julietta Rabins, and we are working from the textbook, A Creative Approach to Music Fundamentals by William Duckworth. This week we are going to examine compound meter. This is the kind of beat groups, meter, that divides the basic pulse into three. And we're also going to look at some other rhythmic features this week, including syncopation, which is when you get an accent in an unexpected place, and also ties, when you tie a note between two measures, over a bar line. And we'll see a little more of what we're talking about there. Okay, so in simple meter, we learned that if you have for each beat in your measure, you're going to subdivide into two. So if you're in 3/4 time, you're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and so that's a total of 6/8 notes, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? But it's counted 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now in compound meter, we subdivide each beat into three. So you're given an example of 6/8 time where you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would actually, you can also count it 1 and 2 and it's still 6/8 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but there's only two beats that subdivide into three. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. To get a feel for how some different kinds of notes subdivide, in compound meter, the beat is usually represented by a dotted rhythmic value, because as we learned in the last chapter, if you have a dotted quarter note, that's equal to 3/8 notes. So that's actually very handy. It's going to subdivide into 3/8 notes. Real clear and easy to notate. But what kind of number could we put in the meter to represent a dotted quarter note? If you remember in the past chapter, when our quarter notes got the beat, if we had three of them in a meter, we would have what we call 3/4 time. The top number would tell you how many beats are in the measure, and the bottom number would tell you what kind of note gets the beat. And the quarter note most often gets the beat in rhythms, but there can be some other numbers. One way is to look at that bottom number, 4, and just what happens if there's only one of them in a measure. Put a 1 on top. 1, 4, quarter note. So when we are looking at a compound meter, that bottom number becomes a little more problematic, because there really isn't a number that can represent a dotted quarter note. You can't put a 4 as the bottom number because it's a dotted quarter note. So we can't actually show directly the number of beats in the measure with compound meter. So we're actually going to show you the subdivision of the beat. So if there was let's say that our compound meter had only one beat per measure, okay, and that one beat was a dotted quarter note, it would actually it would be subdivided into 3/8 notes. It would consist of 3/8 notes, and so the meter would actually be called 3/8. But we have to figure out how to calculate the beats. So if you look at the next slide, you take that top number and you divide it by 3. Because the top number will always be divisible by 3, because it's showing the beat subdividing into 3. So if there's one beat, the top number is 3. Divide that by 3, and you get 1 beat per measure. So I'll give you an example. That would be like 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and. Now, if we have a 6 as the top number in compound meter, we're going to divide that by 3. It means we have 2 beats per measure. So that's what would be 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Now we could also have 9 as our top number in compound meter. So let's divide 9 by 3. Means we've got 3 beats in a measure. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a. Now let's imagine 12 is our top number. Let's divide that by 3. It means we have 4 beats per measure. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. So in compound meter, we will typically have as the top number either a 3, a 6, a 9, or a 12. It's going to always be divisible by 3. Now let's take a look what's going on with the bottom number. The most common number that we're going to have on the bottom for a compound meter is an 8. And that is because the dotted quarter note is the most common type of note to receive the beat, to represent the beat in compound meter. And so the 8th note is typically the bottom number. And so we can have 3/8 time, which would have 3/8 notes in a measure, or 1 dotted quarter. We could have 6/8 time, which would have 6/8 notes in a measure, or 2 dotted quarters. We can have 9/8 time, 9/8 notes, 3 dotted quarters, or 12/8 time, 12/8 notes, or 4 dotted quarters. That is far and away the most common. Now, it is entirely possible to have a 16 as your bottom number, which means that it's telling you the number of 16th notes you have in the measure, and it's a dotted 8th note that gets the beat. That's less common. It's used to represent perhaps especially fast-moving music or something like that. You can have a 4 as the bottom number. And in that case, we are looking at 3 quarter notes to represent 1 beat, or a dotted half note. So in that case, you could have a 3/4 time, which typically 3/4, when 3 is the top number, it's kind of a funny case. 3/4 time is probably better categorized as simple meter because it's slow enough that we're going to hear 1 and 2 and 3 and. It's subdividing into 2. Now the little 3/8 time tends to move faster, and it's counted 1 and a 1 and a 1 and a. So we usually associate that more with compound meter. So 6 is we very commonly have 6 for the top number in compound meter. But let's take a look what happens if we have 6/4 time. That means that we would have 6 quarter notes in a measure, or 2 dotted half notes. If we have 9/4 time, we would have 9 quarter notes in a measure, or 3 dotted half notes. 3 beats, they'd be dotted half notes. We could have 12/4 time, in which case we'd have 12 quarter notes, or 4 dotted half notes. And the dotted half note would be the beat, so that would be counted 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. You can have 2 as the bottom number, which means that the half note is the subdivision and the beat would actually be a dotted whole note. Very rare, sometimes associated with early music, Renaissance transcriptions and so forth. Far and away, your most common bottom numbers for compound meter are going to be an 8 or a 4. And your most common top numbers, in some cases a 3, but 6 and 9 most common, and sometimes 12. And you're not going to really go beyond that. Okay, so let's take note. This is showing you all the different versions of compound duple. So compound meaning it subdivides into 3, duple meaning there's 2 beats. So you actually could have 6/16 time, which is 2 beats per measure, and the rhythmic value getting the beat would be a dotted 8th note. And these would all be counted the same way. Like 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and a. This is also the case for 6/8 time, 2 beats in a measure, but now the dotted quarter note gets the beat. Far and away the most common. Same way of counting. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 6/4 time, 2 beats in a measure, dotted half note gets the beat, counted the same way. Now for compound triple, we could have 9/16 time, which would be 3 dotted eighth notes. Much more common would be 9/8 time, 3 dotted quarter notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and yes, you could have 9/4 time, which would be 3 dotted half notes. Now compound quadruple, you could have 12/16 time, which would be 4 dotted eighths. More common would be 12/8 time, which is 4 dotted quarter notes. Something like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you could have 12/4 time, which would be 4 dotted half notes per measure. So dotted values, if you do divide a dotted value in half, like a dotted whole note divides into 2 dotted half notes, you can think of it that way, or a dotted whole note divides into 3 regular half notes. A dotted half note can divide into 2 dotted quarter notes. It can also divide into 3 regular quarter notes, and so forth. Now, even in compound meter, the really small subdivisions of the beat can go back to just dividing into 2. When you're dealing with 16ths and 32nds and the really small ones, a lot of times it does just divide into 2. But that primary division of the beat, the one that you're counting, that is what subdivides into 3. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and Now we can talk a little bit about tied notes. If we are to go back to this example, I could add some ties to it. I'll play it once just straight, and then we can add some ties, and I will then play it with the ties. So if we started like this, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if I were to add some ties, the second line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you notice, every time we start a new measure, we start a new note. I restrike a note at the beginning of the measure. A tied note connects a previous rhythmic value into a new measure. So like if you look at this last line, it would be 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. I'll play it for you to demonstrate just that last line. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. It just gives us a way to have longer note values than what you can hold in one measure. It allows you to have a sustained note that holds between 2 measures and so forth. So our next concept is syncopation, and that's when an accent is placed where you would otherwise not expect it. So like for instance, if we did well, even the same example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Very straight. Now let's accent it unexpectedly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So So I'm accenting beats like 2 or 4 or just places you don't expect. You can also accent like one of the subdivided beats, like for green sleeves you could have one and two, one and two and one and two and one and two and two and it's just that angular feeling of being thrown off the beat, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, instead of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so forth. There's also a little reference in this chapter to repeat signs. I can show you on our example once again. It's a double line with 2 dots placed to show which section is being repeated. So if we look at this, on that top line I've added repeat signs, which just means I played those 4 measures 2 times instead of just once. So and then I'd repeat it. Before going to the last line. And that's done just simply to save space in the notation. If you're going to have the exact same thing happen more than once, you might as well just put a repeat sign, just so you know to play it twice. And I just tell people there's 2 dots, so you play it once for each dot. That's one way to think about it. Okay, thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you for the next lecture, and be sure to let me know if you have any questions.